I'm Henry. I'm one of the co-founders of Reclaim. On with me, I have Sandy, who is one of our engineers at Reclaim, been with Reclaim for a long time. Super excited to be presenting to you all today. Today, what we're going to do is kind of do a rundown of some new releases that have come out in the last few weeks. Got a couple really exciting things to share with you all. And then with any remaining time, we can take questions. And then typically we'll do sort of a overview of like best practices and tips and tricks for Reclaim, whether you've been using Reclaim for, a few days or a few months or a few years. Sometimes these things can be good to do a refresher on. So I will start with account settings, which is the kind of latest development. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And then I'll turn it over to Sandy to give an update on one of the items that you'll see here, which is webhooks. So Reclaim, as you probably know, if you've been using the product, it's a great way for you to sort of define what types of routines and tasks and meetings you want to spend time on, prioritize them, have Reclaim automatically schedule them for you. It's very kind of individual focused. You can sort of set those things to whatever you like. But for a long time, what we've been hearing from customers is that they want kind of better ways to deploy Reclaim across their team. So things like, hey, I want certain types of habits or routines to be recommended to people when they sign up, or, my team works particular working hours. I want those to be the defaults for anyone who joins my team. And so we've built out this new section in here in the top right that you can get to by clicking on your avatar and then clicking on account. And you will see this new set of settings. The first thing you'll notice is a nice little improvement is you can now add an image for your team. So you can give us a URL and we can use that icon for your team. So you can kind of associate it with your brand or whatever your kind of company's brand would be. But the big changes here, members and billing now kind of live in these spots. So for things like managing your existing users, you can go over here. If you want to make changes to your plan, you can go over here. You can access some of the kind of classic, invite settings and admin settings. I'll come back to this third one, which is new in a little bit here. But then there's this new section called defaults, and this is what we're really excited about. This is just kind of the beginning of this journey for us of sort of, pushing Reclaim policies down into the team as opposed to just sort of having people do all this stuff bottoms up. But we have this new feature in here called habit templates. And habit templates are basically a way for you to define habits that you would like to be recommended to your team. So let's say you're a sales team or an engineering team, and there's particular routines that you want to, have your team focus on. For engineering, it might be like coding, or for sales, it might be like prospecting. And what this will do is when you add these templates to your account, they're very similar to habits. They pretty much have all the same parameters. You're basically just kind of building a template that people can use and customize. You can add a little note about why you're recommending it. And then what will happen is when people sign up and join your team, during onboarding, they'll be recommended these templates in addition to the templates that we recommend by default based on your role when you sign up for the product. And so you can now see those team templates here. Only admins in the account can create and modify templates. So you won't see these options if you're or this little button here, big button here, if you're a non-admin. But obviously as a user or as an admin, you can take any of these templates and modify it to your liking. So you can say, yeah, I really don't want to eat lunch between 9 and 5. That's kind of silly. I think probably 12 to 2 p.m. is probably the right policy for me. And I'm going to go ahead and save this, as a habit on my calendar. And it'll basically just kind of take that template and make it my own. So this is a really cool way, I think, for, if you're a small team or even a large team that's trying to kind of bring Reclaim to other people, or if you're kind of curious about bringing other people in and you're sort of like, I want people to sort of see the benefit of this thing because it helps me, get a little bit of focus time each week or eat lunch, you can kind of recommend and kind of codify those things to folks. One of the next things that we're going to be building very soon are what we call shareable habits. This will give you the ability to take an existing habit that you have and share it with somebody. And you'll be able to, this is the reason you don't see this today, is this is only for Reclaim admins right now. Very soon it'll be available for everyone. And this will be another great way to sort of share Reclaim in a way that is really more about inviting people to your habit, or if maybe you want to share habits that make you particularly effective on social media or anything like that. If you want to kind of share the love and also kind of share routines with other people, this will be a really cool way to do it. So super excited about that. The other cool thing inside of account settings is this set of default hours. By default, we will give a set of working hours and meeting hours to anyone who signs up for Reclaim. And for a very long time, that's been a sort of static value. We made a determination on what we thought the right working hours were for everybody. And obviously, many teams work different hours. We have some teams that are like, hey, we work later in the day and we start our day at 10 a.m. or something like that. And so now what you can do is you can set default hours for your account. And this means that anyone who joins your account will automatically inherit those hours. This is not going to update any hours on your team or change anyone's existing working or meeting hours. We're not going to mess with those. This is just for kind of new users who join your team. So there's a couple really nice things you can kind of now take advantage of as an admin, and this is available on any plan because we don't want to sort of just limit this to enterprise people. We want any team of any size to be able to take advantage of this. You can now deploy habit templates and default hours in your account. The other cool thing, and this was also kind of based on some feedback that we've heard from customers over the years, is you can now limit which features show up during onboarding when people join your account. Sometimes teams are like, hey, I really don't want people turning on smart meetings initially, or I don't want people necessarily focusing on habits initially. I just want them to set up, XYZ. And so if you're like, I just want people to, set up habits, buffer time, maybe scheduling links and not calendar sync. Like I just want people to set up these things during onboarding. You can now change those settings, and during onboarding, folks will see kind of whether those, which features are recommended and which ones are not. Once people are in the product, they can use, all these features in the UI, but this is something that's come up a lot as we've been kind of rolling out Reclaim to, small, medium, and large teams. Is there sort of this sense that sometimes there's particular focus areas or features in the product you really want to draw people's attention to. And obviously the default is all features, but you can kind of modify this as you like. So super excited to introduce this to you. There's a lot more that we want to do with this section, but we really wanted to start with a couple of things that we think of as being the most common and the things that we'd heard from customers most frequently. And so that's probably a great segue to turn it over to Sandy to talk about webhooks. So Sandy, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Webhooks have been a pretty core part of Reclaim for a while. Great way to share your availability. But what happens if you want to get some of that data, that booking data into your CRM? What happens if you want to give marketing a little bit more observability on what's happening as people book meetings with you? Well, that's where webhooks come in. Webhooks are, for anyone who doesn't know, a way that one server can talk to your server and give it information about events that are happening. So in this case, we will send you events related to bookings, reschedules, and cancellations with your scheduling links. You can get to this screen through the settings that Henry showed you earlier. Oops, excuse me. Or directly through this menu right here. Just pop into webhooks. You'll be brought to this screen. You can easily create a new webhook or edit an existing one. Webhooks have a name, just used as an identifier. We'll see a little bit more of that in a second. They have an endpoint where we'll send the event data, and they have a secret. Secrets can be used to validate the message that's incoming, make sure it's actually coming from us, et cetera, et cetera. Once you've created a config, you can go into the edit form for any scheduling link. And if you scroll down to, there it is, webhooks, you can add a webhook. You'll be given a list of all the available webhooks on your team. In this case, we want mine. Save, and now any events that go through involving that scheduling link will be sent to your webhook. So over here, I've created a little configuration, or rather, this is what's receiving my webhook data. So if we go onto that booking page and we book a meeting for today, I got a busy day today, I didn't even realize that, and confirm. We'll just wait a second. There we go. Reclaim has sent us data just right off the bat, immediately to our webhook endpoint. Same thing happens for, oops. Same thing happens for reschedules. There it is. And of course, cancellations, which I'm going to do since it's apparently my only free point during the day today. There we go. Let's take a look at the actual data package that's being sent along here, because we have some cool stuff that happens. First of all, we can actually attach custom data to that. So if you want to make links a little more identifiable, maybe you want to specify that this was sent out to this person, we can do all different kinds of stuff with custom data. So up here in the query string, I'm just going to set any query key that has data dash as its sort of prefix. So data dash, let's say ID equals hello. Oops, sorry, that was from the wrong page. There we go. So data dash ID, there we go, let's do this. 1, 2, 3 and category equals blah. Now, when I book this meeting, confirm, let's wait for that message to come in. Excellent. Now let's take a look at the JSON payload that was sent along with that. There we go. So in addition to the kind of normal stuff you'd expect, we can see this was a created event. We get all different kinds of information, but also that custom data that we attach to the URL exists here. So you can attach whatever data you need to a link and it comes through in the payload. What about debugging? What happens if your messages aren't going through and you're not really sure why? We can head back over to the configuration page over here. And on any configuration, you can pop that open, show messages, and you'll get a complete history of all the messages, as well as, let's find one that's got more than one retry. Here we go. As well as all the attempts to connect. If you have a message that's failing over and over again, let's say you've made a change and you don't want to wait for an auto retry to come in, you can take any message, click the retry button, and after a few seconds, another retry will go through. And I think if we actually go over here, we'll see that, yeah, indeed, there was another message that came through right up here at the top. So in a nutshell, that's Webhooks, super powerful tool and a fully, excuse me, and a good feature set to go with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we really wanted to build webhooks around was this use case of sending. We've heard from just tons and tons of folks that they have like CRMs or marketing automation platforms. We actually ran into this ourselves when we were using scheduling links as part of an onboarding sequence that we would use in HubSpot, where we wanted to like automatically unenroll people in that sequence once they booked a meeting. And that's just one of probably, dozens of examples that you can think of where you might use this data. And so I think Stewart was going to join us from our team to talk about how he set it up. There we go. Then we can do a little Q&A.
Stewart, we just got an intro to webhooks.
Cool.
Take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Stewart Walks, and I run sales and customer success here at Reclaim. And as you can imagine, a big part of my job is to get connected with Reclaim users and to help them find success with our product, achieve their goals, that type of thing. And one way I do that is to reach out to people and offer up my time and offer up an onboarding session like Henry just mentioned. And in that email, I include a booking link, a scheduling link. And up until this point, what I would do is someone would book time with me and I would quickly head over to our CRM HubSpot and I would update their contact record and do other types of housekeeping. This would only take really a couple minutes, but it would happen a few times a day. It was an interrupt for me. And also, quite frankly, there are times where I would forget or just miss an update and then the CRM would get out of sync with reality. And then I have to spend time later to clean it up. So with the release of webhooks, I've been able to tie Reclaim into HubSpot. And I never have to even lift a finger. It's this whole updating of HubSpot when calls are booked becomes 100% automated. So it's really saving me a lot of time and some peace of mind as well. I'll show you what it looks like quickly. I'm going to share my screen right now. And what you're looking at, this is my actual Reclaim account. This is my Reclaim team onboarding link. you may have received, if you're on the call, an email from me already, or you may be receiving an email from me in the near future. If I scroll down and into my settings here, you'll see that here it is. We have this new webhooks setting. I'm sure Sandy kind of demonstrated this earlier. When someone books a call with this link, this particular webhook sales onboarding call booked will fire. And when it fires, what I've done is because HubSpot can't receive webhook calls directly, what we're doing here is we're using some middleware. And here at Reclaim, we use a tool called Pipedream for a lot of our integrations. You can do the same type of thing using any kind of other popular middleware integration solutions. But what you can see here is I have a workflow defined in Pipedream, and it's basically a webhook receiver. So I have this step one, which says listen for webhook calls at a particular address. And then I'm executing some code, some simple code actually that's in our documentation that says, hey, just validate that this call into this webhook actually came from Reclaim. Let's make sure that there's no kind of malicious activity here. And if the call doesn't come from Reclaim, we're just going to kind of like stop the workflow right then and there. But if it's a legit call and it came from Reclaim, now I'm going to dive into kind of the CRM housekeeping that I mentioned before. And I'm sure the workflow will, this workflow is unique to me. Your workflow will be very specific to your exact use case. But for me, I'm just right here through Pipedream, picking up on the email who booked the call with me. I'm looking them up in our CRM. I'm getting their contact record, and then I'm updating their contact record. And all of this is completely automated for me. So this is just an example of how we're using webhooks. Again, this Pipedream product, we enjoy it, but it's not a requirement. This is just how I've implemented the integration for myself. So hopefully that's helpful for folks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stewart.
That's awesome. And thank you, Sandy, for, demoing webhooks. I think for someone who maybe isn't so involved in the technical side of things, seeing the practical application of why webhooks are super powerful for our users is really exciting, because you can integrate with tools like HubSpot or your CRM or marketing tools that your team uses and automate those workflows. Just really opening up a lot more automation. Like Stewart said, it might be 2 minutes here or 5 minutes there to update things when those calls get booked or rescheduled or canceled, but being able to automate it is what we're all about. And taking that off your plate, gives you that time back for other important things. So webhooks, super exciting update. Henry, is there anything else you wanted to add before we, or actually, I guess we have one webhooks question that we might want to answer here from Zach.
Yeah.
Before we move on. I guess that webhooks are only for business users since it has the business tag. When I try to use it with Zapier, it just fails to create the webhook. It might be nice to have a confirmation like this is for business plans only.
That is a great piece of feedback. And it sounds like we should update our error reporting. And we can probably rig that up pretty quickly. I'm guessing we're doing that entitlement check, just not spitting out a particularly useful error. But yes, webhooks are for business and enterprise plans only. Today we're, as with anything in software, we're going to kind of see how all that goes, and it may change in the future, but that's where we wanted to kind of start, given just the market and sort of what typically these types of integrations look like for other kind of products in the market. But yeah, definitely we'll take that feedback to the team.
So Henry, do you want to wrap up with a few other updates that we have outside of webhooks and account settings, and then we can leave some time for questions at the end. Feel free to drop in any questions you might have about the things that we're talking about today or other topics in the Q&A section, so I can moderate them all in one place.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I'll show off a couple of little updates, and then we can take some questions, and with any remaining time, we can do a deep dive into some best practices, any like tips and tricks that we think are particularly useful. And then I see a couple questions in here about Outlook, so maybe we can talk a little bit about what's coming next, since we've been doing a lot of our planning for 2025 and the remainder of this year quite recently. So the first thing I'll show off is a little improvement. And up until recently, this was something that we literally could not deliver because Google didn't have an API for it, but they now do. So we're, naturally adapting. If you head over to integrations, some of you may use the Google Tasks integration. This is our OG task sync integration. This was the first task integration we ever built. I think we've probably grown the Google Tasks user base at Google by about 1000x just by having this integration. Don't think a lot of people were using GTasks, but I think Reclaim makes it pretty useful. One of the flaws, though, with our integration was that Google recently released these pretty cool updates to Google Docs. You've probably seen it as you've been using the product, where you can do things like add a task into a doc. So they have these little smart chips, and this exists in Google Docs. It exists in Spaces, if anyone uses Google Spaces. Some people do. But Google Docs is really the most common spot where this will show up, or in like Google Sheets. And so you can do things like pick a task here, and I can say like, I need to, update my CRM records, and I can assign it to someone. So I can say like, I want to assign this to myself and give it a due date of like, let's say the 15th. And when I do that, I'll get this nice little assignment, and this actually syncs with Google Tasks. So if I like check it here, it'll get checked in Google Tasks as well. And what was happening was Google had not provided an API for this particular integration. So we couldn't actually take these tasks and push them into Google Tasks. But as that API has now been released, we now can do that. And so I'm going to pop over here to my calendar. And if you click on the tasks item here, the one downside, and this is unfortunately, again, a downside of the API that was provided, it does not let it specify. You probably saw here, I wasn't allowed to pick like a list when I created that task. So by default, it's just going to go to my tasks. You can see it here. And now what I have to do is just move it into my Reclaim list, and now it's going to get scheduled for me. So pretty cool. You get that link back to the document, which has this, ton of information, really important stuff. But this is super cool. This has been requested, I don't know, like 100 times. And I think we let everyone know who'd requested it. But really, really excited to get this one out there. A little small improvement for our GTasks users. The other thing I'll call out on Google Tasks, on small updates, is on scheduling links. For a while, actually, as of, I don't know, probably 6-7 months ago, we added what's called target calendar support for pretty much everything in our product. So you can do things like go into habits, and you can say, I want to schedule this on a different calendar. In this case, actually, sorry, you can only do it on new habits, excuse me. I can go in and pick like which calendars I want to add my habit to. So you can pick like sub calendars and other accounts and things like that. Similarly, we have this functionality for tasks. If you go into hours under personal settings, and you pick like a custom time policy like this, you can say, hey, these are the calendars I want to like schedule any tasks that go into this set of hours on. You can do the same thing with smart meetings, et cetera, et cetera. But for scheduling links, we never really had this capability, or we had it, but it was only for what we call primary calendars, meaning you could only book scheduling link meetings on the primary calendar. That's this calendar at the very top in Google. You couldn't like say book a meeting to any of these sub calendars like Project X or Project Y. And so what you can do now, and I hope I don't get burned by this again, what you can now do is pick the calendar that you want it to book to. So these are all my sub calendars in here. So again, small improvement, but really nice little kind of gap to fill. And now pretty much we have target calendar support for essentially everything in Reclaim. And as a reminder, for anything that you want to have target calendar support for, but are missing it, or for whatever reason can't sync your calendar, or can't use it as a target calendar, you can always use a calendar sync policy to push events from calendar A to calendar B. So that's a nice little workaround as well. I think that's everything I wanted to cover on small updates, and I see that there's about a bajillion questions, and so we should probably dive into those. And happy to kind of dig into that. Maybe I'll keep my screen up since I imagine some of these things might be things I'll want to share through.
Perfect. Let's just start from the top. We've got a bunch of questions, so I think we'll have the 15 minutes full here. Narek asked, is there a way to limit the amount of time worked? I'm a consultant / freelancer and don't want to work more than a set amount of time for a client. There are certain tasks that are connected for a client, but I have no way of logging or tracking that.
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's certainly an area that we're going to be spending, I think, more time thinking about. There's kind of generally this theme of people describe it for all sorts of stuff, for meetings, like a max meeting hours per day, max task hours per day, that kind of thing. I wouldn't say we have like a perfect answer to this today. The closest thing, and typically the guidance that we give to folks, is to use a custom time policy. The downside of a custom time policy is that, well, I should say the upside of a custom time policy is you can literally limit the amount of time that can be worked on tasks. You could create a time policy called, or a set of hours called client X work, and limit it to like 4 hours a day, and use that as your scheduling bucket. The downside is it has to be a specific range of 4 hours. You couldn't say like anytime between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and only 4 hours within there. So that would probably be where we'd kind of implement this. That'd probably be the way we would start to kind of build it out. But as of today, this is the closest kind of approximation for that. I guess the other thing would be to, if you're using a task integration, would be to use some of like the native like time boxing and time tracking features within there, and then sync those tasks over from that project. That's something I've seen folks do with ClickUp, as an example, where there are some more of those kind of time sort of gating, or I don't know how to put it, hour restriction features. But today, probably our answer to this would be to use custom hours.
All right, we've got a couple questions on, we have the Outlook beta that people are wondering on updates for, and also we've had some questions on using AI for Reclaim. Is there a way that I can ask AI about my schedule? Maybe this would be a good way to loop in our AI assistant updates as well.
Yeah, so I'd say on the Outlook beta, we opened up Outlook to a few hundred people. We found a whole bunch of problems, and we have been hard at work addressing all those problems. Part of the shift to Outlook, in addition to launching support for an entirely new calendar platform that has all of its own unique qualities and quirks, is that we are also basically re-architecting the way that Reclaim syncs with other calendar platforms. It's essentially decoupling us from Google's API, and it's going to help with reliability and stability and performance. But it is sort of like it's a big shift in our event syncing model and our scheduling model. And so where we are today is that in the middle of December or thereabouts, we're going to be reopening the private beta. We're going to be onboarding probably several hundred folks from the wait list, and definitely reach out to support if you haven't already. We've got a kind of side list that we're keeping of just particularly interested and motivated folks who are really interested in getting into the beta. That beta is going to include effectively support for every feature in Reclaim using Outlook as a primary calendar, except for, at least initially, habits and smart meetings. And then probably about 2 to 4 weeks, or about a month or so after that initial private beta release, we're going to be opening it up to everyone on the wait list, as well as probably for the entire world. And that will include support for all features in Reclaim. So you'll be able to sign up with an Outlook calendar, use it as your primary credential. You can use calendar sync, you can use habits, smart meetings, scheduling links, and essentially operate it the exact same way that you would operate Google Calendar. So that's coming soon. I know it's been a long road to get here. Definitely a lot of learnings on our side as far as just the challenges of integrating with a pretty different platform from Google, but we're getting very close, and we should be in a position to get this out to pretty much everyone in the first quarter of next year.
And for AI assistant, we've had some questions on having sort of more conversational input abilities and
Yeah.
using that kind of LLM style for Reclaim.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically we've had this this is a little preview, and I think maybe we've showed this in a YouTube video before. You know, see how this all works. We've got a few different prompts that we've been training this model on. This is all very, very, very early beta. You can see like it doesn't know how to answer questions like that right now. And we've kind of got it trained up to do things like schedule tasks and meetings, and do things like move meetings or block out your day for an urgent kind of issue. But this is an area that we really want to be investing more energy in 2025. And I'd say that there was a question I think in the Q&A about like what makes Reclaim AI. And I think usually when people say AI, they're usually saying they're using it as kind of like a synonym for LLMs. Our perspective is that AI goes a lot deeper than just like a chat integration. I think what Reclaim has really excelled at is highly deterministic, highly predictable, essentially kind of, machine learning-esque scheduling logic. So you can go into Reclaim and sort of set a bunch of preferences, and Reclaim sort of adapts and learns in real time based on, what it knows about your preferences. And so the benefit of that is we have all this infrastructure, and we have this really great foundation from a scheduling standpoint to do lots and lots of complicated workflows that pretty much no other product on the market can do. What we're missing, and where I think we're behind, and where I think we have a lot more work to do, is on that chat interface. Because it's great to have all that infrastructure, and it's great to have all those knobs and dials, but we've definitely heard it, in lots of different ways from many, many, many users and customers that like, if you want to kind of do like a multi-step process on your calendar, clear my calendar for this week and reschedule my meetings with, Stewart and Elizabeth and block out some time to do XYZ. That's a lot of like clicks, and it's a lot of like little dials and adjustments. And that's a perfect kind of thing for an LLM to be able to kind of interpret. So that's one of the things that we're going to be working on most likely next year. And then the other side of it is classification. We released priorities a long time ago now, about a year ago. And that was always meant to be kind of this foundation for giving us the infrastructure to prioritize all the stuff that's on your schedule so that the scheduler can make trade-offs in intelligent ways. But we're still at the stage where this is all manual. So you're like manually tagging these priorities. We'd love to get to a place where you can say to an LLM, and this is part of what we've actually trained Reclaim Assistant to do, and you can see it, I think, in the YouTube demo that we put together, is to reprioritize events based on what we know about the event data that's in the calendar. So things like attendees and descriptions and titles and other types of heuristics that we can use to sort of figure that out. So lots more to say here and do here, but this is, that and Outlook are very much at kind of the top of our list for kind of big remaining innovations that we want to focus on from a scheduling standpoint.
Awesome. We've got another couple questions in the same vein. Rachel asked, are there any plans or a way to create custom categories? And Zach asked, any plans for tags or folders for tasks? So task organization, do we have anything on the roadmap there?
Yeah, custom categorization is another great example of where that type of classification system can be really valuable. For those unaware, if you head into your personal settings, we have this set of kind of pre-baked categories. If you go into your Slack status sync settings, which you can set up through this guy, you get a kind of longer list of categories. Reclaim already has a whole bunch of mechanisms to classify events. And essentially what we would be exposing for color coding would be kind of opening up that classification system to allow you to define things like, hey, this is work on project A, or this is however you think about your time, you could create categories for it and train the system to sort of understand those things. That's a tricky project in practice, and even with LLM magic, it's kind of hard to get right. I think one kind of half measure or step that we've talked about towards that, although again it's somewhat manual, is adding like hashtags or other types of tag support. So you could like put like a hashtag into an event, kind of like you do for Reclaim Free or Reclaim Busy or the other hashtags that exist that kind of make Reclaim do, sort of novel things with Google Calendar events, and then use that as a way to classify the event. Maybe like a reserved word list would be another one. But I can tell you, having built these scoring systems for the last 5 years, it's very, very difficult, not because training something to understand one category is hard. It's hard to not have categories fight with each other for top billing. I'll give you some example, literally an example we ran into just the other day. A person had an out of office event on their calendar, and it had the word parent in it. And when we see a word like parent, we think, oh, okay, that's like a personal commitment. You're going to go pick up your kids, or you're going to go, pick them up from school or what have you. And so we classified it as personal rather than vacation. And there's all this like scoring and weighting that you're doing under the covers that's pretty tricky. LLMs are far more advanced than that. They're doing all sorts of other scoring, but ultimately it'll have some of the same, challenges. So we'll always want to have those deterministic levers. And I think tags would be a great way for us to do that. I'd say that's a close cousin of the topic of folders or tags with regard to tasks and other types of things in Reclaim. I think colors, hours, and sort of tasks and projects are kind of this like connected, list of things that we want to sort of do some build out around. But I think probably the first thing we're going to do is kind of focus on color coding and pulling that through into your stats so that you can actually see like how your time breaks down across your own custom categories, kind of like you can in Google today.
So I know we're running up on time here, so maybe we have time for one more question. Recurring tasks, another one that comes up quite often. Currently, there's a gap in habits where I can't have a deadline and a habit instance can be skipped, which doesn't work for things like weekly report submission.
Yes, I would say that recurring tasks are still something that are on our radar. We've been feeling a bit less pressure on them from a request standpoint since we moved to Habits v2, just because we now have a lot more of these like recurrence options. But it sounds like it's not quite meeting the need for certain type. I mean, we know that there's certain types of scenarios where it's not quite there. Recurring tasks isn't currently on our roadmap, but it's something that we kind of continue to talk about, but no plans currently to build it out there.
Maybe we can fit one more in here also on the topic of tasks. Can we create draft tasks? I have tasks I want to add to Reclaim, but I don't have any sort of duration or deadline for them yet. It's more like a set of tasks that I'd like to work on later, but I want to keep them in Reclaim.
Yeah, this is another one of those like things in our backlog that we've kind of discussed but have not yet prioritized. What you're really kind of thinking of is like an unscheduled or like a backlog for tasks. You can kind of do this with no due date tasks because they'll basically just keep pushing out. So if you like created a task with no due date and then you have your settings set up to like basically push tasks out, basically the start tasks manually so they get pushed out automatically, which is super nifty. If you don't know about this setting, you should really take advantage of it. In theory, you could basically have a task that never gets marked as busy and just kind of keeps pushing out until you start it. But backlog tasks and draft tasks are definitely the kind of thing that we've wanted to work on, just haven't had the bandwidth to work on it yet. So definitely on our radar. If we have I have a couple extra minutes, we can breeze through some more of these.
Are any standing out to you, Henry, that you wanted to take? I know we have more questions than we have time to get through, but if there's anything you were looking to answer.
I think branding from meeting confirmations. There was a question here about any plans to remove branding from meeting confirmations, white labeling. I'm pretty sure we delivered this already. But if you're still seeing branding and you have this setting turned on, please let us know, because that would be a bug. So within a scheduling link group, what you can do is go in and decide whether you want to use Reclaim branding or remove the branding. This is not custom branding. You can't yet upload your own branding. This is one of the things that we're going to be probably working on in the near future. But what will happen is that all the booking pages within this group are going to inherit this set of branding settings. And then you can always override that. So you can do things like go in here and say, do I want to use the same as group? Do I want to use Reclaim branding, or do I want to remove the branding? So nothing, I think we've pretty much delivered at least the remove the branding part. The custom branding and white labeling stuff is a little further out. Yeah, an option.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. All good.
Cascade integration, no plans at the moment. This was a question, I think, from Narc. And then Cameron asked about desktop apps or mobile apps. This is another really big focus for us in 2025. Most likely, we're going to be starting with a native mobile app. Native desktop is interesting to us, but ultimately, we're really interested in getting into mobile surfaces. We think there's a whole bunch of workflows there that we just wouldn't. We need to do a better job of supporting. And then the other thing we're potentially going to be working on is a Chrome extension to help kind of offer a little bit more surface area in Google Calendar than we have today with this add-on, or this add-on over here. Dustin asked about a cool function would be also if you could assign specific buffer times to different events. Yes, I completely agree, Dustin. There are a couple of different flavors of this that we are thinking about building fairly soon. And this is another one of those, been around a long time. Today, when you create buffer times, it's basically all meetings or all video conference meetings or no meetings. The two kind of things we want to support are pre-meeting buffers, so the ability to set buffers before meetings, and then the other would be only creating buffers after either certain kinds of meetings or after certain durations of back-to-back meetings. So things like, I had, anytime I have more than an hour and a half of meetings in a row, give me a break, but otherwise, don't put buffers after everything. So definitely on the short list for 25. It's a big gap for us today. Planning to give some love to the linear integration. We need more control over the duration of the tasks that sync from linear. T-shirt sizing is very limited currently. We currently, just for folks who use the linear integration, if you were unaware, we map estimates in linear to kind of a set of pre-baked durations. And I think folks have asked in fits and starts for the ability to customize those estimates. You can see in some of the other integrations, we've definitely built some very multifaceted kinds of rule sets and other types of sync rules. And I think we could probably do the same thing for linear. We don't currently have plans to, but it's definitely in our backlog of improvements. Trying to see if there's anything else here that stands out.
Maybe Thomas's question, is there any way to create an event in Google Calendar and have Reclaim treated as a task by using some special title or hashtag?
There is not really a great way to do that today. In the planner, we've added some pretty nice features for it. So you can do things like, create a thing here and make a task from here. This is super nifty, but this is actually part of why things like a Chrome extension are really useful. Is right now in Reclaim, we could maybe add a hashtag, but that's just I don't know. It's like our default answer for so many things. A Chrome extension would let you actually like have a like special button here that says like create a task. What you could do is you could create a Google task. So you could say like, hey, I want to do this thing from this time to this time and put it on this list and add a, add a task here, and that could sync to Google Calendar. So not a great answer today, but certainly from the planner. And I think once we have things like a Chrome extension, that'll make things easier.
Thomas also asked, this was, I think, in reference to the Google Docs to Google Tasks integration or little workflow now. Would be great to have an option that Reclaim just takes all Google Tasks from the main lists and adds them to the Reclaim list.
Yeah, I think I kind of get what you're putting down here. Unfortunately, it's tricky. There's the API that we get here is pretty limited. We've considered that model before, and what we've ultimately concluded is it could end up pulling in quite a bit of garbage for people. But definitely something for us to look at again.
And I know we're a little over here. Jonathan asked a philosophical question that I thought was nice, if we have time to answer that. I know y'all use Reclaim for your own calendars. How has it impacted your lives at work or even in your personal life?
I eat lunch and take walks a lot more than I used to. Which was very little when I was before I started Reclaim. I would say also, and this is, we'll probably want to cut this out of the webinar when we publish it, but as many of you probably know, we've joined Dropbox, and I have a whole bunch of one-on-ones that were put on my calendar that were like normal one-on-ones, and I hate it. I didn't realize how much I was like relying on smart meetings to make my life easier, because I'd just gotten used to the idea that if I declined a meeting or if I just like booked over it, it would just like reschedule. And when I'd go on vacation, I wouldn't have to come back and like reshuffle a bunch of stuff. And I've been really trying to like get everyone that creates one-on-ones with me to use smart meetings instead of a regular one-on-one, because it's really annoying. But smart meetings have made just a huge difference for me, particularly in conjunction with priorities, because I get to kind of have confidence that like all the important meetings, these are not my smart meetings, but I have like, a dozen or dozen and a half one-on-ones with a bunch of folks on the team. And it kind of is a great way for me to sort of like check in with the folks that I know I'm going to need to check in with every week. And I can always adjust those things. And Reclaim even has like logic behind the scenes that says like, hey, you haven't met with Elizabeth in a few weeks. Like, let's try to really make sure this thing gets scheduled this week. So there's some really nice like stuff that's happening behind the scenes that just kind of keeps me on track to have the types of meetings and discussions and touch points, with the team, especially being remote, that we need to have. I mean, list goes on and on. Calendar sync, like I've not had to worry about getting overbooked for a personal meeting or personal thing like for better part of 5 years now, and that used to happen all the time. I don't know, Stewart, Elizabeth, you got anything else?
Stewart, what do you have?
Yeah, so like one of the things I rely on the most is like the most important thing for me to do on any particular day is to meet with our customers. We have some internal meetings on the calendar. Some of those meetings I really need to attend. Others are kind of like nice to have meetings, nice to attend meetings. Like we do this all company demo every other week. I love that meeting. It's recorded. I can always watch that after the fact. So I've deprioritized that meeting and opened up the possibility for customers to book me at that time. So super powerful and something that I'm using all the time.
Yeah, what would I say? Now that we have our new notification settings, which I love, I'm able to stay on top of my time block plan. I'm someone who, when I get into deep focus, like time doesn't exist, I will just work through meetings. Now Reclaim dings at me when an event starts, so I can check back. It keeps me on track, makes sure that I'm actually working on the things that I said I was going to work on during the day. So that's been huge for me as sort of a, task doer. Love checking those things off. I think that's a really great one. Really great question to end on here.
Cool.
Awesome. I know we went a little over today, but really great questions. Thanks so much, everyone. If we didn't get to your question, I'll be sure to review and answer them in the follow-up. Feel free to reach out to us. As always, thank you so much for joining us. This video will be on YouTube, so you can watch it later on 2x speed if you want to rewatch anything. But really great feedback. Thanks so much for joining us. Henry, Stewart, Sandy, thanks so much for being here, and we will see you in our next webinar on YouTube or just in the chat if you do reach out.
Thanks, y'all. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.